We've got double the A&A fun for you today. This is the IssuesWatch podcast. Hello, and welcome to the IssuesWatch podcast. I'm Brad Muniz, your host for the bi-weekly accounting and auditing episodes. I'm the partner in charge of accounting and auditing with Sobel & Company. These A&A episodes qualify for Nano CPE credit. If you're interested in earning CPE credit for this or other episodes, hit the pause button now and head over to njcpa.org/nano to find out how. A quick disclaimer, these views and statements expressed herein are our own and not necessarily those of NJCPA, Sobel & Company, or Witham. Well, we have a special episode for you today that was recorded at the NJCPA Convention Expo featuring Frank Boutillette and me. Please take it away, Brad! Thanks, Brad. Looking good today. All right, with me today is Frank Boutillette, retired partner from Witham. Frank, how does it feel to be back at the convention?
Love it. I love the atmosphere and all the people. Everybody should attend this every year.
Yeah, I mean, we've got all the vendors here. Look at the swag we got. I mean, to our fans. Woo!
Aaron Rodgers throwing deep.
Yeah, he dropped it. Must play for the Giants. Okay, so we've got some A&A issues that we have to go over. We got a quick time limit we got to go through. If you have not been following these episodes, you go back and look at them. For the past few weeks, I've been talking about ESG, environmental, social and governance. And now again, the FASB decides that they're going to start exploring the use on accounting for ESG credits. They've ignored it for the past for a while. Now they're diving into this. The areas that they're looking at, those created under compliance programs, renewable energy certificates and credits, and carbon offset credits. So the FASB everybody else, PCAOB, keeps focusing on this ESG.
Yeah,
so
agreed. And also what's happening is there was a meeting with the Investor Advisory Committee, and what that whole meeting was about was transparency. They're trying to make it more, the financials more transparent so the users have better information. Number one, they're looked at in income tax disclosures. They want more income tax, what taxes are being paid. As you know, the big thing right now in this administration is companies aren't paying their fair share of tax. So this is going to give you more disclosure on what taxes are being paid. They're going into earnings per share. More disclosures on what shares don't create anti-dilution. They want to have that disclosed. A lot of companies aren't disclosing that. Then the big one is digital assets. They're all about digital assets. They want more disclosure on digital assets. This is what Bitcoin and tokens. So they want disclosure of what's fungible and what's not. A fungible digital asset would be a Bitcoin, where non-fungible would be a company issues tokens that only be sold within their own environment. They're getting into segment reporting. Again, more information on this segment. They're drilling down to make sure there's enough information for the user to understand how the segments are going. And again, they talked about ESG. More disclosures on ESG. You can't get away from ESG, Brad. They want more disclosures on ESG. They want more for people to understand. And then there's a disaggregation of the income statement expenses. They want to drill down into more detail on expenses so users understand what kind of expenses are expected in the future.
I found that one interesting. It almost sounds like they want to go XBRL.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. All right, so moving on to the AICPA, the Professional Ethics Executive Committee, PEAC, has a proposal to update compliance audit definitions for those that do compliance audits and certain interpretations. I'm going to read down the list real quick because we're just making sure we're keeping on time. Some new definitions. They want the compliance audit. They're coming out with a new definition on that. The compliant audit at test client. They're going to revise three definitions: financial statement at test client, the client affiliates, and state and local government client affiliates. Finally, they're going to eliminate the affiliate requirements of compliance audits. So there's been a lot of work with the PEAC. If you haven't viewed the PEAC meetings, they're actually free. You can log on and subscribe to it and watch their meetings. There's a lot of good information. If you're in either public practice or in industry, the PEAC, through the AICPA, has a lot of independence, conflict of interest stuff that you really should be aware of. So look for their meetings and listen to them. Good thing they're online now, so you can just listen. And I'm not saying do other stuff and get credit, but check out those meetings.
Yes.
Then the SEC. I know people wonder why all the time we're talking about SEC stuff, because we have a lot of members here that work for SEC companies, that handle SEC clients, so it's important that we do cover all the different areas. So there is a proposal to enhance disclosure by certain investment advisors and investment companies. Get this, Frank, get this.
I'm listening.
Guess
I'm
what
listening.
about? Guess what
I'm
about?
ready, I'm holding on.
About ESG investment practices.
I know.
So I've said it in previous sessions and everybody just goes, shuts off. I don't need to hear about this. I don't need to care about this. Environmental, social governance, ESG. It's not going to escape us right now. This is big, it's coming in. So now with the investment companies and investment advisors, they want to enhance disclosure as it relates to that. So this keeps coming in.
Well, they want to make sure that companies that are following ESG are really following it, so that if I want to invest in one, I'm investing in the right company. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
There's a lot of stuff going on with it. So,
Okay.
and
So now I'll talk. Let me level with you on SPACs. Okay, I'll talk about SPACs. So as we heard, SPACs were the big boom about a year or so ago, and they've started to wind down. The reasons for that is the stock market plummeting. It's not as attractive to the companies. Other issues with SPACs were there's been a lot of scrutiny and government regulation. So the SEC has come back and said the accounting wasn't exactly what they expected it to be. Here's the thing, Brett, I want to bring up is on redeemable shares. It's been done this way for 20 years. The redeemable shares are either in equity, because they need a $5 million needs net equity in order to go forward with a transaction, and the difference went to temporary equity.
Okay.
That's the way it's been
Mezzanine?
done. Right, mezzanine, temporary equity. Now, generally accepted accounting principles, isn't that generally accepted? But the FASB said, but the SEC said it's not. We don't agree.
What the general user of the financial statement wants.
That's what I always thought generally accepted accounting principles. If everybody's using it a certain way, then it must be generally accepted. But the SEC said, no, we don't interpret it that way. So redeemable shares had to be removed on the financial statements. Warrants had to have fair value, because warrants were handled as equity. Now they're fair value. So there was a lot of restatements that went on. Then the other thing that was happening, where publicity was coming out, that a lot of these de-SPACing, when a SPAC buys the target, the value of that target is not there to support the $10 share value. Right. So the stock value dropped. So suddenly you have these big SPACs. You know, Shaquille O'Neal had a SPAC. I mean, all these big.
So it was a Shaq SPAC?
Shaq SPAC. Okay. It was a Shaq SPAC, yes. You had a Shaq SPAC. So again, that's the stock. His SPAC kind of went down a little in value. So when that started happening, people said, maybe these aren't great investments. Again, with more regulation, with this administration, they want more regulation. So the SEC, now there was 800 SPACs that came on the market between 2020 and 2021. How many public companies do you think there are right now, currently?
Oh, how many?
Public companies, listed public companies.
Everything?
NASDAQ and the SEC and New York Stock Exchange.
Pick a number. Rachel's holding up 30,000, she's saying.
Right here, 6,000.
It's only 6,000?
There's only 6,000. So imagine having eight new public companies coming into a market that only has 6,000 public companies, and where that money is. So the whole SPAC market has slowed down tremendously because of those things. Now, a SPAC, real quick, a SPAC is a blank check company. They go out and raise money without having a target. And then they have 24 months or less to find a company to buy. There's only so many companies big enough that can be purchased. And 80% of the money has to go into the company that they're buying. And a lot of these SPACs were raising $100 million, $500 million, $1 billion. DraftKings had $1 billion that they raised. So again, they're not as attractive going public anymore. So that's why we're seeing that market kind of dwindle down.
I've mentioned SPACs a bunch of times on these presentations, so I appreciate you coming in and giving us more background information.
Thanks. Well, Witham was #1 SPAC auditor for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a little plug.
Okay.
But yeah, so, and then the other thing I want to speak about is this whole thing with China audits. So in 2020, President Trump passed the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act. So what that act enacted was that any companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange or a U.S. Public company, they have to have their audits inspected by the PCAOB. China has a law that they're not allowing foreign governments to review work papers that were done on audits in China. So this act says if you don't have your audits inspected within 3 years, you are delisted from the stock exchange. So now you got Congress trying to figure out how do we get China to move on this, and they're also playing that whole China-U.S. thing. So it's to come, but in 23 it's supposed to push this forward. So there's a lot of things going on there. So we're going to see a lot of changes.
It's interesting. So Frank, thank you for joining us. Thank you for seeing everybody. I will say real fast, I went to a committee meeting and I want to mention 3 committees. Jerry Convoy is the new chair of the Government Accounting and Accounting Interest Group. Mike Kaplan's the new chair for the Accounting and Auditing Interest Group. And Rob Deflison is the new chair for the Nonprofit Interest Group. Sign up for these groups. They're great. They provide a lot of value. And with that, back to you in the studio, Brad. Look at these arms. Wow. Great job, Brad. And you too, Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching. Visit the NJCPA Accounting and Auditing Knowledge Hub at njcpa.org/hub/accounting for articles, news, podcasts, and events on various A&A topics.